Welcome once again to another edition of Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. It is Friday night. That means it is time for movie or TV talk. And once again, introducing my co-host this week, John Figaro Norris.
Hello, everybody.
And he, of course, he says to the chat, we all hope that everyone is staying healthy and warm. We're trying to here in the frozen tundra of South Carolina. Have you got snow on your part of the town? Because we're about 40 minutes apart from each other. He's about 40 minutes north of me.
No, not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Have you seen flurries even?
Not yet.
Okay. I just wondered. I know that I don't know, he stays at home to work. I had to go out and for a doctor's appointment earlier today. And luckily, we got in and out of the appointment pretty quickly. So I got home just as the rain started to calm down. So we didn't have to actually be out in the rain today, which was good because most South Carolinians don't know how to drive in wet weather.
Amen.
Let alone snow. I think they would, it's almost like, they're talking about, well, we're putting salt on the roads. I'm like, yeah, but what did you put out there? Table salt or road salt? You kind of wonder. But we're here tonight to talk about the film's Nightmare Alley, based on the novel by William Gresham from 1946. The first film is the 1947 edition, which was acquired by the studio at the request of the feature actor Tyrone Power. And then we'll also talk about the most recent edition, which just came out last December, by Guillermo del Toro, featuring Bradley Cooper and Kate Blanchett. But let's go ahead and start with the first one, the 47 film. I'll let you read.
So, 1947, Nightmare Alley, directed by Edmund Goulding, screenplay by Jules Furfman, based on the novel, as we said, by William Lindsay Gresham, produced by George Jessel, starring Tyrone Power, Joan Blondell, Colleen Gray, and Helen Walker. Genre is thriller. Many people also consider it film noir. Distributed by 20th Century Fox, release date October 9th, 1947. Running time, 1 hour, 51 minutes. So, what it's about. The movie follows the rise and fall of a con man, a story that begins and ends at a seedy traveling carnival. A carnival barker, Stan Carlisle, is fascinated by everything there, including a grotesque geek who prompts an observation.
Whoops. Hold on a second. Something's not right here. Let me see if I can figure out what's going on here. Something is missing. Hold on a moment, folks. Let me see if I can figure this out.
And I will say, if I sound a little strange talking, it's because I just came from 2 days of having some temporary crowns put on my teeth. So I've got...
Okay. I figured out what's going on. Somehow the graphics got messed up.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go from here. He's interested in the geek, and he asks the carnival barker or the carnival owner, how does someone get to that condition? And so it is explained to him by the carnival owner that he takes a drunken person and basically manipulates them with alcohol, with opiates inside of it, and turns them into a geek. And freaks them out to the point where they're afraid that if they sober up, that they will be completely mindless or whatever. So they go ahead and just stay drunk all the time and just do what they're told. And that kind of baffles him a little bit, but he's like, okay, kind of a weird thing. But he's actually more interested in the act where they have a fortune teller, Xena, and her husband Pete, and he's helping run the Barker part of their show, and he wants to learn how they do their show, but she won't teach him, and Pete's too drunk to teach it to him. And basically she's saving it for a nest egg, so that when she's ready to retire, she can sell the process to someone else. Well, either by accident or by a chosen moment of spite, he hands Pete some alcohol, but it's wood alcohol instead of regular drinking alcohol. And of course, Pete drinks it and he dies. And this forces Xena to teach him the tricks of the trade of what they do. And once he's learned that, he's really not interested in her anymore. He's more interested in another carnival worker named Molly, who's like the electric lady, who can handle all the electric shocks and stuff like that. And he pursues her, which we can now go to the graphics. And when their romance is found out, the remainder of the carnies, including the strongman Bruno, force the duo to get into a shotgun marriage. He's no longer welcome at the carnival, and he realizes that this is actually a golden opportunity for him. So he and Molly leave the carnival, and he becomes the Great Stanley, performing to an enraptured audiences in expensive nightclubs in the city of Chicago. As well as things seem to be going, however, Stanton remains emotionally troubled by Pete's death and by his own part in it. Again, the way the film is presented, it could be accidental, it could be with malice. It's not really clear. You can interpret it either way. But he feels guilt over it, so he eventually seeks counseling from a psychologist named Lilith Ritter, to whom he confesses all that has occurred, which is basically just the fact that he may or may not have had a direct hand in, he had a direct hand in his death, but not whether it's intent or not is not really described. Since Ritter makes a point of recording all of her sessions with her patients, she has accumulated sensitive information about various members of Chicago's social elite. Recognizing each other as kindred spirits to some degree, she and Stanton then conspire together to manipulate her patients, with Ritter secretly providing private information about her patients and him using that information to convince them that he can communicate with the dead loved ones that they are concerned with contacting. This plan almost works until, well, it does work. It works very well for a lot of places, for a lot of different people, but he then tries to swindle a skeptical client named Ezra Grindle by having Molly, his wife, pose as the ghost of Grindle's long-lost love who died when she tried to have an abortion of her child by Grindle that he forced her to have, and both she and the child died. When the heartbroken Grindle breaks down, Molly refuses to play out the charade and then reveals her true self to Grindle, which exposes Stanton as a fake. As he prepares to flee, Stanton discovers that he has been scammed by Ritter, who only gives him $150 of Grindle's money rather than the promised $150,000 that they had conned him out of to that point. With her recordings of Stanton's confessions to her available for use against him, she threatens to testify that he's mentally disturbed and whether he tries to accuse her of complicity in his crime. Defeated, he gives Molly the $150 and urges her to return back to the carnival world where her friends care for her. Meanwhile, he does escape into the underworld, shall we say, and he gradually sinks into alcoholism. with nowhere else to go, they don't tell you how long in this film, but you can kind of get the point in the newer film. It's a long time. But with nowhere else to go, Stanton tries to get a job at another carnival, only to suffer the ultimate degradation. The only job available to him is to become a geek, eating live chickens as a sideshow act. He replies to this offer with his recurring catchphrase, "Mr. I was made for it." Unable to stand his life any further, he goes berserk. However, Molly just happens to work at the same carnival. She didn't go back to the carnival that she came from, apparently. She manages to calm him down and give him hope, bringing things full circle between Stanton and Molly to Pete and Zena's doomed relationships. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Now, when we get to the 2021 film, there's going to be a lot of differences. And whether those are good or bad is part of what we're going to be discussing. But did you read the novel this was based on ever?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So neither one of us can speak how well the films adapt from the source material. I saw this version second because I didn't want to spoil the modern version in the theater. This version to me is much more direct, and all the characters are much more sympathetic, which we'll talk about more shortly when we talk about the newer version. As I said, Tyrone Power actually requested Fox Studios to buy the rights for the novel so that they could adapt it, and he could start it because he was sick and tired of playing heroic leads that were popular, and he wanted to take a new challenge as an actor and play a challenging character to portray. And they actually had the author come in as a consultant on the screenplay. But exactly how much of a say he had in it, who knows? That having been said, I would say the Stanton come across in this version as evil or self-serving, particularly in the beginning of the film.
Definitely self-serving.
Okay, self-serving but not evil. Okay. Until after he teams up with Ritter, then he kind of descends into evil and malice, right?
Right. I don't know if I would say he was evil, but at the same time, I wouldn't say he was good either.
Well, I mean, maybe not malicious, but I mean, I'd say evil. I mean, it's got to be pretty evil to try and manipulate someone into thinking you're speaking to their dead ones and communicating with your dead loved ones. So that's kind of weird, but I think but the thing is, I think Ritter's the catalyst for the whole thing. I think he would have been just fine and completely satisfied doing his act in nightclubs without her. If she had never came into his life, I think him and Molly would have just been successful. He might have had to move from Chicago to another city once the act got stale there, but move from city to city and just do the things until they're whatever. I think that would have been enough for him. Do you agree or not?
I do. I think so.
Okay. As far as the rest of the cast, Joan Blondell does a great job playing Zena Crumbean. And I think she's more sympathetic in this version than the modern version by a long shot. In this version, it's presented that she was kind of infidelity. She, committed infidelity towards her husband Peter, and that's why he became an alcoholic and was a fall down drunk. And they parted ways, and then he came back to her, and she tried to make things right. And she was trying to get him sobered up so that where he could get treatment for alcoholism enough and do. And you felt something for her more. My rating for this version is 3.5 stars, and yours was 3. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. That basically means it's an average film. I think it's a little bit above average. It's kind of a weird thing, though, because the film failed miserably at the box office in 47.
Yep.
But it got a lot of praise from critics in the sense that the acting was really well received and the story was well told. It was just, for that era, it was too dark of a story, I guess. Didn't have a happy ending.
Yeah.
So they were like, that's what they were criticizing. And I'm like, well, why should it have a happy ending? But at the same time, the ending that was there was kind of like, it gave you the hope of a happy ending. It just didn't show it to you. That doesn't happen in the new one.
No.
And I think that's quite the change. So we're going to talk about that one. 2021 version, directed by Guillermo del Toro, screenplay by Guillermo del Toro and Kim Morgan, based on Nightmare Alley by William Lindsay Gresham, produced by J. Miles Dale, Guillermo del Toro, and Bradley Cooper, starring Bradley Cooper, Kate Blanchett, Toni Collette as Xena. That's supposed to say Rooney, not Ronnie. Mara as Molly, William Dafoe as the carnival owner. I'm not sure who Richard Jenkins plays. Oh, Richard Jenkins plays Grindold. Ron Perlman plays Bruno. Mary Steenburgen has a very small role in it, but it's a very significant role. And David Strathairn, who plays Peter. Production companies, Searchlight Pictures, TSG Entertainment, and We Double Dare You Productions, distributed by Walt Disney Studios, which is kind of a shock. But that was because they bought out Fox, and Fox was actually the distributor. Genre neo-noir thriller. This one is definitely considered noir. The other one, it's yes and no. It's not quite noir enough to be considered a full noir. That's why I didn't list it that way. But anyway, the release date was December 17th of last year. So it's been out about a month. And it has an dreadful 2 hours and 30 minutes compared to the hour 51 of the 47. There's a reason for that, though. And it's just, I don't know. Did it feel like a 2 hour and 30-minute film to you?
Kind of, but not in a bad way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. All right. The plot is basically the same. But like I said, the version's 40 minutes longer because of the various changes and additions that he makes to the story. Whereas in the 1947 version, Stanton is already working at the carnival at the beginning of the story. In this version, film starts with us seeing him burying a body, whom we later learn is his father, whom he let die of illness as he watched, and then burn his family home down and walk away from the burning building and get on a bus, more or less, and travel hundreds of miles away and start begging for work at the carnival. We don't see the same kind of relationship between him and Xena and Stanton either. In this version, Peter is the one who teaches Stanton their code and other tricks as he begins to sober up before the accidental wood alcohol situation. Only in this case, I think it's much more intent that Stanton gave it to him on purpose, because I think he learned enough from Peter to figure out the rest of it and just, well, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to use it my way. So rather than have him be a problem, I'm just going to get rid of him. That's how I got it in the film. What did you think of that? Because I really didn't see like it was accidental, because there was in the scene, he had both cases and he knew which one was supposed to be which.
Right.
Pauses, and he takes the one that is the bad alcohol, but that wasn't demonstrated in the first film. It was it looked more like an accident in the first film. This looked like direct intent. This version of Stanton is actually a much more irredeemable piece of trash, though, overall. And exactly that's how Cooper plays him in the film. All the while showing the steps of his path to his own oblivion in more direct ways. And we get to see more of his own damaged psyche in this version than what Tyrone Power was allowed to portray. And I think that has to do with what's allowable in film between the two eras of the times.
Right.
But with that being said, it just makes the character that much more unlikable, to the point where you just can't wait to see karma bite him on the ass. And when it does, it's a weird mix of horror and satisfaction. I didn't get that same feeling with those same plot twists happened in the 47 version. Did you?
No.
And I think that's what makes this film a little bit darker and a little bit weird comparatively. Xena was more important in the first version. In this one, she's really not, because Pete's teaching Stanton, which is kind of a shame because it makes her character weaker, and it really wastes Toni Collette in the role. Even though she does a very respectable job with what she's given, you don't see the you don't really see the relationship between her and Stanton at all. You don't, other than it's almost like a, I don't know, a maternal son type relationship more than, whereas in the other film he's trying to seduce her.
Right.
In this one, there's a sort of a seducement, but she's like too savvy to be seduced, I guess is the way it's produced more in this, which is why he goes more for Molly. And in result, I think that's where Del Toro changes the seduction scenes more towards Molly, to make Molly more interesting and more three-dimensional of a character, because she's not that three-dimensional in the 47 film. I think the special effects for her carnival act in the 47 in this film are great. They don't even really show it in the 47 film.
They show it like once and like only very briefly.
Right. So I wanted to see, the thing was, I wanted to see more of Molly's act in the Chicago ballrooms, because that was a far more interesting act than the mentalism stuff is to me. So I was a little bit disappointed that they didn't do that. But then again, I mean, you can only do that so often. You know, you can't, because your body can only take so much of that, even though she knows technically how to do it. You know, it's still putting your body at risk. Kate Blanchett, she chews up the scenery as Dr. Ritter. Both she and Cooper overact in this movie, I think. And I really don't like Kate Blanchett in the film, but that's more me than her performance. I don't like Kate Blanchett in hardly anything. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. I didn't like her as Galadriel in Lord of the Rings. I saw potential of her as Hela in Thor the Ragnarok, but that was actually her best one. I liked her best in that, and that's, I don't know why, but you know, it wasn't as strong of a role either. But you know, it is what it is. But I'd say the biggest difference is in the ending.
Yep.
In this version, Grindald is killed, and he's wanted for murder of that. And he isn't killed in the first one. In the first one, the reason he's off running around for years for you know however long he is running around is because Grindal keeps sending people after him to try and get rid of him, which is why he makes him go even further into the underworld. But in this version, Molly leaves Stanton at the after he runs over Grindald and they escape, and wants nothing more left to do with him. And she's not there at the carnival where he goes to work as a geek. They end the movie with the point of him saying, yeah, that's the role I was born to play. Leaving the film closing in a much darker and karmically vengeful way, rather than the parallel relationship of Xena and Pete and Molly and Stanton. The cast in this version is stronger. but I think the changes that Toro makes aren't necessarily in the best interest of the story. Then again, neither one of us have read the source material, and I know Del Toro read the material before he saw the first film, so maybe he was more truthful to the novel than I realize. So I don't know if it's just that it's the difference of what's allowed in 1947 compared to the day, so that they could do much darker stuff and show the darker nature of Stanton, and show that he's a complete irredeemable prick, and explain Stanton to that in that way to the audience, or if it's just, I just didn't like it as well because it was too dark. But I only gave it 3 stars instead of 3.5. You liked it better than me, though.
Yes, and for the ending, the original ending, or the ending in the original film, was imposed by the studio chief. It's like, he didn't like the ending in the book, and I think he and the screenwriter, or the screenwriter at the studio chief's insistence, added the fact that Molly and Stan, embrace each other. And for me, it's like, I like happy endings as much as the next person. But
your sound's out.
I'm sorry?
Your sound went out for a minute.
Oh, I said, I like happy endings as much as the next person, but I also like the appropriate ending, and which isn't always a happy ending.
Right.
And I think in Del Toro's version, that was the appropriate ending.
Yeah. Ironically, both films have been perceived by a lot of the critics as too dark, though. Both of them. Of course, different eras, but still.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is, I went into the first film, or the second film, which is the one I saw first, I should say, the newer one, because Del Toro is so into the supernatural. I was expecting a more supernatural film than what this was. I was expecting, like, I thought that I didn't know it was based on a book. I thought it was an actual original story that he came up with that was going to be a real freak show with real freaks, supernatural type freaks. And so, in a lot of ways, my expectations were so off and not met for what I wanted. I think that's another reason why I didn't care for the film as much. Whereas when I watched the original, I know what I'm getting. It's now watching it as a compare contrast learning type situation. In fact, I got a book here, Miss Medusa's Monstrous Menagerie, which is a comic book that just came out from Kickstarter from Unlikely Hero Studios. This is what I was expecting for the film. And it's a very similar opening. They're at a carny, and Miss Medusa's introducing stuff, and there's a little dwarf woman who's coming to the carnival to get a job. And the whole story is about her coming over to the carnival and meeting all the different people. But this is what I was expecting. And I was like, kind of amused when I got this, because I hadn't read it before I saw the film. And I was like, yeah, this is what I was looking for. This is what Del Toro should have done. But it's just really quite the show, as you can see.
Yep.
So yeah, so they do that, and that was kind of what I was looking for, a little bit on that. And so when I saw the Cooper one, I was a little bit disappointed that there wasn't any of that. And really, the only really fantastical thing that was going on was Molly getting shocked, taking the electricity. And they only did that really twice in the film. And I was like, yeah, they should have done that in the later stuff. I just really felt like that because the mentalism, I mean, most of us know how it's done now. Back then, no, but these days those codes are fairly easily figured out. Audiences are more savvy of it. So it was funny because in both versions, Xena and Pete tell him, don't do this to manipulate other people. If they think it's real, come clean and tell them it's all a system that they do, so that they aren't thinking it's really, supernatural gift or whatever. And of course, he doesn't do that in either version. So, but that's because he's more manipulative. But I wonder if his killing his father and burning the family home down was in the book or not, because that really cemented the fact that Stanton was evil long before he even met Ritter in the new film. Mm-hmm. You knew right away that from the very first minute and a half of the movie, this guy is scum of the earth, and there's no reason for you to have any sympathy for him at all. Whereas in the original film, yeah, there's karmic balance. Yeah, he did a lot of things wrong, but there's this sensibility that there's some good in him. He's just, misplaced mentally or something. He just, there's still hope for him. And again, like you say, that must be a studio people wanting it that way. Because
it was.
So, I think that, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should reverse that and give it a 4 instead of a 3.5, like you gave it a 4 on the second film.
Well, the reason I gave it a 4 versus the original film's 3 is, I saw the original film twice because, I mm-hmm. thought we were going to have a chance to do this earlier, and we didn't. Mm-hmm. So I've seen the original film twice, and while yes, the original film is more direct, and the character of Stan isn't totally irredeemable in the original, the Del Toro version I found just drew me in more, to the point where I actually haven't stopped thinking about it since we saw it.
Wow. Okay. That's not good.
Well, for one thing, I think it's visually beautiful.
Yeah, it's. I would say Del Toro's film is much more cinematic.
Yes, and
this is Guilfoyle's. Did I pronounce that correct? Detention says, I thought geeks were cool until I saw Nightmare Alley. And she prefers the Del Toro version as well.
Yeah, but there are some, in particular, the scene where the geek escapes and Stan has to go into the House of Horrors to get him out.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was an amazing set piece, and mm-hmm. it gives you a hint of where Stan's headed, where his character's headed.
Mm-hmm.
but I thought it was visually beautiful. I thought Bradley Cooper did a really good job, even though he's unlikable. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't stop watching him anyway.
Like I said, he overacts a little bit though. Yeah, he's trying so hard to draw you in, to make you, like you say, he's a train wreck, but you can't stop. You still got to see the crash. But the other thing was, Del Toro does it in stages. At the beginning of the film, he doesn't drink. He refuses to take alcohol because his father was an alcoholic, and of course, that's part of why he was against his father and let his father die of whatever he died of, illness, freezingness, and then burns the body and leaves. But when he starts taking now, okay, well, what's one drink going to do? You can see that that's a trigger for him to start descending. And then there's another trigger and another trigger where you can just see him losing himself to his own madness, if you will. And I think that's probably the one of the elements that's missing from the 47 film that would have made it more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, I don't know, for some reason, I think it's probably because I just didn't care for Cate Blanchett that I liked the other one better.
Okay. I did like Cate Blanchett, but to each their own.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying she did a bad job in the role. She did her job very well. I just don't like her as an actress for some reason. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. She asks, who's the better Molly Cahill, Rooney Mara or Colleen Gray?
That's a good question.
I think Rooney had more of a character to play than Colleen did. Colleen's character was much more innocent,
mm-hmm.
and but yet more self-reliant in certain ways. Rooney played more of a more innocent version, so to speak, less worldly version of her, and then she became more worldly as she got more and more with him, and then as he goes on his own path of self-destruction, she is there. They give her enough to say, yeah, she knows what's going on. She wants to stop it, but she doesn't know how, until she basically confronts him and says, either we do this or I'm leaving you. And so I didn't really see where Colleen's version got to do that. I think I got to see more of a thing of, he realized he's screwed up and that he's ruined her life. Take the money, go back home.
Right.
Whereas she was done with him in the Rooney version. And I think that's so, as far as the ending being terrible, I thought the ending was more truncated. I would have liked to have seen something more with it. And I don't like the idea that it was a different carnival that she just happened to be at. That made it a little bit too convenient. It should have been the exact same carnival, and they should have recognized him, and then that's why they put him in the geek role as punishment for what he did. That would have been more self-evident, I think, in the 47 film if they'd done it that way, and she didn't realize it was him until that moment, and then she sees him and realizes. That would have probably made that a little more believable for the audience, I think. But the way they did it, it was a little bit weak. But I think for what they were given, it's pretty equal. I wouldn't say one was actually a better than the other, unless you wanted to say that Del Toro wrote a better version of the character for Rooney to play.
I think so.
That would be a fair statement. Ron Perlman was definitely a better Bruno than the guy.
Yes, no question.
I would say Xena in the 47 film is better than Toni Collette's version, but again, that has to do with how each was written and presented. I don't know if who played the better Ritter.
Oh gosh, now the actor's name escapes me.
Joan Blondell played the 47 version, I believe.
I think they both did well. It's like I feel like I felt for Joan Blondell's version a little more.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, Cate Blanchett overacted it a little bit. You could tell she was manipulating him all the way through the whole thing, and I knew it was coming. If I had watched the 47 film the first time, if I'd watched it before I saw the 2021 version, I would have really not seen the turn coming. I didn't really see her turn of evil really until he's tricked at the end.
Now, in the original, it was Helen. It was what? Hold on. Because Joan Blondell played Xena in the original.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, Helen Walker must have played it then.
Yeah, that's it. Couldn't think of her name.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know. Like I said, it's kind of interesting though. Like I said, there's just something. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it with Blanchett. She saw the 47 first, then the 2021. Again, I think that makes a difference. For me, having seen the first one and really not liking the characters, and then seeing the 47 version, and they're still unlikable, but they're not as unlikable, I guess you could say. I think it makes a difference. But I would say the 2021 version, they're more well-rounded, well-written characters in the 2021 version. It's just that they're darker characters.
I would agree.
And, that coupled with the non-supernatural elements that I was really expecting kind of just left me a little bit disappointed in the end. But that's the way it is.
Yep.
But I could see. I could go a 3.5 for either one of them, I guess, or maybe even a 4 for the second one. But I don't know. I just, like I said, I just was a little bit turned off a little bit on. And that's just me, I think. So you're not wrong in your rating by any means. But so what else you got to say on this, if anything?
And like I said, ever since we saw it in the theaters, like I find myself just thinking about it. So
Well, it must have really impacted you then.
It has definitely stayed with me.
Yeah.
It's of course I think it's very well acted. It's beautifully shot, beautifully scored. I definitely think it's more cinematic than the 47 version is, and
yeah,
I think that's one thing Del Toro is very good at is I think he's visually a great director, and he really knows how to pull you in.
Mrs. Guilfoyle's attention mentions that the 2021 version, there's an element that bugged her, was the Mary Steenburgen and Richard Jenkins scenes reminded her of Step Brothers, the movie.
I haven't seen Step Brothers, so I can't really speak to that.
I think I know what you're talking about. We didn't mention that scene. Jenkins is a police officer whose son went off to war and was killed, and his wife, played by Steenburgen, is mentally distraught over it. And Stanton sees her and does his trick, and they're the ones that Ritter is given some information about. So he plays this thing up, and it gets to the point where I don't want to spoil it, but Steenburgen does something that is quite unexpected, so to speak. And that was, I don't know if it was gratuitous to the film or not. I think the point was it was demonstrating that everything he touches rots to oblivion at that point, because of his self interest. He doesn't think or care about others. But Step Brother, the movie, stars those two as the parents. Oh, okay. In their iconic roles. So, okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I can see why that would bother you then, because here they are, parents, and they lost their kid, and then the stepbrother thing, and yeah, I could see why that would bother you. Because of what the characters end up doing. Yeah, not good. That would I understand why that bothers you. Maybe that, I don't know, is that a gratuitous scene, do you think? Or do you think it's something that needed to be there to just show how destructive his touch has become?
I do think it served a purpose, although I can see why people wouldn't think that.
Okay. But because, I mean, they're characters that are so, they're not removed from what's going on, but they're not direct enough comparatively. But I think it also, like I said, I think it just demonstrates how destructive his abuse of others has become and what it does to other people. So I don't think, though, that he should have ever escaped Chicago in the second film. I think he should have been caught and arrested and gone to jail. But, whatever. I understand why they did it the way they did it. It makes sense, cinematically and story-wise. I don't know if you read about about Gresham at all.
Very little.
Okay. What kind of fascinates me in a way is that Gresham himself committed suicide, and he did so in the actual hotel room where he wrote the screenplay, or wrote the book rather.
And
I thought that is a very eerie situation. And there's quite a story behind him writing that book, because it was not just something he made up. He basically got the idea because he met a former carnival worker when they were volunteering in the Spanish Civil War. And he wrote this as a true crime pulp magazine story. And everything that was done had a purpose within those conversations. So how much of it was him and how much of it was attributable to this carnival worker that he never says who the person was, but he attributes the success to that. The other thing that's missing in both films is the novel. Each chapter is represented by a different tarot card. So if you know anything about tarot, there's a kind of a protagonist journey, if you will, through the tarot. And so the whole structure of the book is based on that as well. And Del Toro follows that a little bit closer than what the first film does, but neither one of them really captures it fully. And I think if that had been captured fully, that really would have added the supernatural flair that I was looking for. But I don't know for sure. There was another thing that was changed. I forgot to mention. In the second film, the geek that's at the carnival dies, and that's when Cooper and the owner of the carnival, played by William Dafoe, take the body. And I don't know if he's dead or just really badly drunk, but they dump his body at a clinic or some other thing on the back door. And that's where he makes the comment of how does someone get in that state? Whereas in the first version, he's just mentioning it casually as a carnival barker. So I think, like I said, again, another darker element to the thing. And I think maybe Del Toro is just a little bit more truer to the novel. We just don't know because we haven't read the book. But I think that's pretty much enough for this discussion. We're about an hour in. Again, you gave the first one 3 and the second one 4.
Right.
I gave it 3.5. I'm going to say I'll give both of them 3.5. You've convinced me that I didn't give the second one a high enough score. I would say, take the time to see both of them if you're going to watch it. Be prepared to be a little bit disgusted with the characters. But they're well done. And
yes, they are.
I don't regret having seen either one of them. I just, like I said, I guess because I was expecting from Del Toro what he usually does with the supernatural and the other stuff, that's what we were going to get. So, like I said, it is what it is. Alrighty, folks. Tomorrow, sometime, presuming that the weather doesn't shut down our internet, I'll be back with another live draw episode. And I'll get that Wile E. Coyote colored up.
Cool.
And then we'll ink and color this Marvin the Martian and Canine.
Awesome.
And maybe we'll even get to what he wants me to draw, which is not Fox and the Hound.
Robin Hood.
But we'll try. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video or you think others might, please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons to continue to get support from this get content from this channel. I always say get support from this channel. I don't know why. But anyway, I thank you for watching. As always, we thank you for your support on the channel. If you want to contact me, I'm on Facebook at Lewis.BrightRaven, at Twitter at LewisBrightRave2. You can see more of my artwork at deviantart.com/BrightRaven. You've been watching Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven exclusively on YouTube. If you have questions for me or you want to make suggestions as to topics to be discussed, or you want to commission artwork, Quoth the Raven LBR72@gmail.com is the best place to reach me. If I don't get back with you, say 24, 48 hours, try lewisbrightraven@yahoo.com. And John can be reached at Figaro at hotmail.com.
That's right.
Okay. So that'll be it for tonight, folks. We thank you for watching. Have a good one.
Good night, everybody.